Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending the announcement of OSHA's top 10 most frequently cited standards for fiscal year 2020. My name is Kevin Drewley, and I'm an associate editor covering worker safety for the National Safety Council's Safety and Health magazine. With us today is a familiar face for this presentation. We're happy to welcome Patrick Kapust, Deputy Director of OSHA's Directorate of Enforcement Programs. Patrick began his OSHA career in 1991 and has served in the agency's national office since 1999, while kindly lending his time and expertise to this presentation every year since 2011. It's a streak that began in Philadelphia, has made separate stops in San Diego, and continues today in cyberspace. Now, if you've attended enough of these top 10 presentations, you're keenly familiar with Patrick's bio. And to that end, we realize that you folks really anticipate this data more than any pomp and circumstance. We do remind you that this data is preliminary. It's, as you're seeing on the screen now, from this past fiscal year. I know we're in 2021, but we know about the pandemic going on. But yes, this data preliminary reflects that from October 1st, 2019 to September 30th. But without further ado, we will get to Patrick, my fellow member of the Pandemic Facial Hair Club. So again, Patrick Kapust, whenever you're ready, please go ahead and take it away.
Sure. Thank you very much, Kevin. Folks out there, I always appreciate the opportunity to give the top 10. I know it's well anticipated, and I enjoy doing it. So I hope everybody's doing well during these times. Wish you, your families, your friends, your coworkers, the very best. I know it's trying, and I'm glad that we figured out that a lot of time going virtual during this time on a lot of things, and glad that we're able to do the top 10 virtually. So the information gets out to you folks. I do miss, I will say, the expo, the atmosphere around there. It's always exciting, and the conference, but I am going to enjoy doing this as well. So with that, why don't we just go ahead and jump right in. So for the OSHA's top 10 for FY 2020, machine guarding. All right, next slide. So machine guarding, 1910, a general industry standard. 212, there were 1,313 violations. Now we're seeing here the types of violations that we're finding under this standard include points of operation guarding, anchoring of fixed machinery, general requirements under 212A3, and exposure of blades under 212A5. Now we're seeing those in a variety of industries. Obviously, we've found them in machine shops, plastic products manufacturing, fabricated structural metal manufacturing, and sheet metal working manufacturing. Next slide. Number 9, personal protective and life-saving equipment. Okay, this is 1926, and this is a construction standard, 1926-102, and it had 1,369 violations. So next slide. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. So what we're finding under this standard is 102A1, use of appropriate eye and face protection. 102A2, use of appropriate eye protection that provides side protection, which these glasses do not. 102A3, general requirements, including use of appropriate prescription lenses and practices. 102B1, criteria for protective eye and face protection, the requirements of the criteria. And where this was cited for roofing contractors, framing contractors, masonry contractors, as well as siding contractors. Next slide. Okay, number 8, again, another construction 1926 standard, 1926-503 fall protection training requirements. We had 1,621 violations. And what we're finding there is 1926-503A1 training programs for fall protection, 503B1 not maintaining certificates of training, written certification of training, 503A2 training programs, fall protection training by a competent person, 503C3 retraining after inadequacies are found, and then also 503C retraining in general. Next slide. Okay, number 7, powered industrial trucks. A general industry standard, 1910-178. We found 1,932 violations. And what we're finding there, 1910-178 L1, operator training and safe operations of powered industrial trucks. We find that quite a bit under this standard. Having the appropriate training, make sure that the operator has been trained properly on the type of truck they will be using. We're also finding 1910-178 L4 refresher training and evaluation of that training. All right, refresher training is required after an employee has been observed operating a truck unsafely. It's also required every 3 years, refresher training, and also an evaluation of that refresher training, which could be very simple in terms of asking the employee whether they understand observing them operate the truck in a safe manner. We also have 1910-178 L6, again, certification of operator training requirement. 178P1, operating a industrial truck that is in need of repair or service. A truck should not be operated if it's in need of repair or service, and should be tagged out so it doesn't prevents it from being operated until it's fully serviced and ready to be moved back into the workplace. Also 1910-178Q7, which is maintenance of industrial trucks and repairs, shall be made by authorized personnel. The folks who do the repairs, they have to know what they're doing, obviously, in order to make sure the repairs are done properly. So where are we seeing these types of violations? We're seeing them in general warehousing and storage. We're seeing them cut stone and product manufacturing, and also recyclable material merchant wholesalers. We found some of these violations. The next slide, Kevin. Okay, number 6, lockout tagout. General industry standard, 1910-147. In the top 10, quite a bit, usually. 2,065 violations. The types of hazards that we're finding under lockout tagout, 1910-147C4, energy control procedures. You must have a control procedure for each type of equipment that you are conducting repair on, to ensure that that is locked out and tagged out appropriately. Also 1910-147C7, which is general training and communication. All right, you have to provide the training on the lockout tagout procedures, on the lockout tagout program at your facility, and make sure that folks follow. 1910-147C6, periodic inspection of your lockout tagout procedures, making sure that they are still adequate after you've implemented them, and that the employees know what they need to do to ensure that equipment has been locked out properly. 1910-147C1, the energy control program, the actual program that oversees your facility, to ensure that you have the appropriate training, the appropriate procedures, evaluation of the program that you have, the right devices, lockout tagout devices for the type of equipment that you have, all the elements of a lockout tagout program. And then finally, 1910-147D, the application of the control. The lock has to be on the energy control device for it to work. We are finding at facilities where they are doing working on equipment, and there haven't been controls placed on the equipment, such as applying a lock or tag where appropriate. Where are we finding this? We're finding this in plastic product manufacturing, sawmills, machine shops, wood container and pallet manufacturing, as well as fabricated metal manufacturing. Okay, next slide. Number 5, ladders. A construction standard, 1926-1053, 2,129 violations. So what we're finding in regards to violations of the ladder standard, 1926-1053B1, use of portable ladders, the use requirements, 1053B4, ladders were being used for purposes that they weren't designed to be used, such as using them as a platform or something to that nature. 1926-1053B13, top steps of step ladders were used as a step. Can't use that top step. There's potential to fall over center of gravity at that top set. You're not going to be able to maintain that. So, and we have seen folks do that. 1053B16, portable ladders with structural defects were not removed from service. Anytime there's a defect in the ladder, it must be removed from service, and assure that your employees don't use that ladder. In many cases, it may need to be taken out of service forever because it can't be repaired. 1053B22, employees carried objects and loads where they could lose their balance or fall. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're going up the ladder and you're keeping control. You're able to grasp the ladder appropriately, carrying loads and so forth. Doesn't allow you to do that. So where we're finding this and what kinds of industries, and roofing contractors, framing contractors, siding contractors, masonry contractors, and new single family housing contractors. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, number 4, scaffolding. A construction standard, 1926-451, we had 2,538 violations. Now, what we're finding here are the 1926 451 G1, the fall protection requirements when working on scaffolding. You need to still protect your employees from falls. 451 E1, access, general access requirements. You have to be able to access the scaffolding appropriately. 451 B1, scaffolds were not fully planked and decked on the platforms. You have to make sure they are fully planked so that there are no potential for folks to step through them and then possibly trip and even fall. 451 C2, scaffolds were not restrained from tipping. Scaffolds must be supported so that they can't tip during the work what is being conducted on them. And then 1926 451 G4, which is installing guardrails on the scaffold. You do need to have guardrails on there to prevent the employees from falling off the scaffold decking. Where we're finding this, roofing contractors, framing contractors, commercial and institutional building construction, as well as I mentioned roofing contractors, so yes. Next slide, please. Number 3, respiratory protection, general industry standard, but also may be cited in the construction industry. 1910-134, we had 2,649 violations. What we're seeing out there as far as in compliance, 134E1, the medical evaluation. Employees must be medically cleared in order to wear a respirator so that respirator doesn't introduce another hazard to the employee. 134C1, failure to have a written respiratory protection program. Again, a program that encompasses all the elements of your respiratory protection program, including training, types of respirators, so forth. 134F2, fit testing and fit testing prior to use and annually thereafter. Employees the respirator must appropriately fit the employee's face. What may fit Kevin's face may not fit my, a respirator that fits Kevin may not fit me appropriate. So each individual employee must be fit tested. 134C2, respiratory protection program. And this is where you still need to have a respiratory protection program. In some cases, even where a respirator use is not required. Also 134D1, the general requirements for selection of respirator, that it is the appropriate respirator for the particular hazard at that workplace. So where we're finding these is in auto body paint and interior repair and maintenance shops, cut stone and stone product manufacturing, metal coating, engraving, and allied services to manufacturers. We're also seeing in masonry contractors as well. And also nursing care facilities, wearing the appropriate respirator protection. Next slide. Number 2, hazard communication, general industry standard, 1910, 1200, 3,199 violations. What we're finding in regard to noncompliance with the HASCOM standard, 1910, 1200 E1, having a written hazard communication program and implementation of that hazard communication program. Sometimes we find that an employer will have a written program, but they just haven't implemented it. It must be implemented in the workplace and should be just maintained in a notebook in the office. 1200 H1, employee information and training, providing the appropriate training. Again, training is part of all these program standards. You have to make sure that the employee understands the hazardous chemicals that they're working with and where they can get the SDS for the particular chemical that they're working with. 1910 1200 G8, maintaining and having readily accessible safety data sheets. Employees need to, again, where they need to look at the safety data sheet, it must be made available to them and readily accessible. 1910 1200 F6, labels and other forms of warnings. You have to have the appropriate warning on your containers that contain the hazardous chemicals, so that the employees are warned as they're using them. And 1910 1200 G1, requirement to develop safety data sheets and maintain copies of them. And where we're seeing this, again, we're seeing it in both manufacturing and in our general industry and construction, masonry contractors, roofing contractors, automotive body paint, interior repair and maintenance, general automotive repair, and machine shops. We're finding these. Next slide. And top number 1, fall protection. Not a surprise. It does is numerous times top number 1 in the top 10. Construction standard 1926-501, 5,424 violations. Okay. So in the deficiencies we're finding under 501B13, not having fall protection at residential construction activities, 501B1, unprotected sides and edges, where fall protection was not provided. 501B10, roofing work on low slope roof, not having the appropriate fall protection. And along with that, 501B11, which is steep roof fall protection. And also 501B4, holes were found that required fall protection. And where we're finding these in several industries in construction, but roofing, framing, masonry contractors, as well as commercial and institutional building construction, a new single-family housing construction. And that is the top 10 for OSHA's fiscal year 2020.
Well, thank you very much, Patrick. No, we appreciate your remarks, especially at the top. I know this is always such a dynamic event at the Congress and Expo. And to that end, I'm reminded that it's about this time that someone not so subtly would ask me to please go back to the entire list for them to copy down. So we'll go back there. There's a couple more slides, but no, I'm sure we both can picture folks really, as always, hanging on your every word, and every time the screen advanced, taking their cell phone out to take a photo. So not sure if they're doing a screen capture function on their computer or taking their phones out again, but we'll leave this up there just for a few minutes more for everyone to get the whole top 10 all at once again. As we've mentioned, folks, there's going to be a separate web event with Patrick. He's going to sit down and just take some questions and answers that you've submitted. So once more, a reminder that you can click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen for that. But before we part ways this afternoon, Patrick, just any overall, what can you offer? What takeaways might you give employers just in general about the top 10?
Yeah, certainly. And I think I say this almost every year. Use the top 10 as a guide for your workplace. It's a good place to start. If you don't know where to start, look at what OSHA is finding. Look at the things that are applicable to your particular industry as well. If you go on our website, you are able to put in a NAICS code and get the top 10 for that NAICS code. And use that tool at our website to help you identify hazards, or to help you identify hazards that you should be looking could appear in your industry. Not necessarily that you have them, but help you to know what to look for. In other words, but use it as a tool. There are a lot of there are a lot of other standards clearly that may be applicable in your workplace, but it is a place to start. So thank you, Kevin.
Oh no, thank you. And again, going back to your remarks, I know we're just seeing what happens in the world events, but certainly hope we can connect and get you in front of an audience of some sort in October for the Congress and Expo, which is set to be in Orlando, I believe. So again, as always, you've been quite thorough. And was there anything else you'd like to say at the moment?
No, just really wish everyone the best. I enjoy seeing the folks. So but under the circumstances, we're glad we could do this virtually. But take care of yourselves and your family, friends, co-workers during this time. And OSHA's here to help. If you go to our website, we do have a lot of information regarding COVID, the pandemic, whole web page dedicated to that, to help you at your work site in order to prevent your employees from getting ill. So.
All right. Well, no, again, we thank you. And I know you folks, you're probably seeing it as Patrick's talking, but just one more reminder, at least audibly, or just to check your mail coming up in the April issue. We plan some in-depth coverage of OSHA's top 10 most frequently cited standards for fiscal year 2020. So please be on the lookout in April and also online. And as always, just as we thank Patrick for being here today, we thank you and appreciate your time and interest with this. So thanks and have a safe day.
You all. Thank you.